Hello and welcome back to my 10 favorite people. Hope you're doing well. There's so much I want to cover in this video regarding the upcoming halving, the latest ETF inflows, and some important news events from this week. But I really want to start this video by covering something that I really struggled with in my first two bull markets, and I see it all over the YouTube comments and all over social media right now, and it's a phenomenon that I'm going to call bull market anxiety. Now, without me even explaining what that is, I'm sure a lot of you already know exactly what I mean and are most likely already experiencing this yourselves. And it's a bit counterintuitive because you would expect bear markets to be way more anxiety filled than bull markets, but there's something about crypto's volatility specifically that makes it so that no matter how exposed you are to this market, whether you're 100% long safer plays, maybe you're 100% long altcoins, maybe you even add some leverage on top, you still feel this anxiety of not doing enough and that everybody else is making way more money and taking advantage of this opportunity. And it makes it so that even though you're making money, you still have this anxiety-filled experience for the entirety of the bull market because you feel like you could be doing more. And this even applies to people that are underexposed. Maybe you're 20% cash, maybe you're 40% cash, maybe you're 100% cash and you're waiting for a pullback and you've had this anxiety for the entirety of this run because you want to get an entry and you don't know if you're going to be able to enter at a price that you want to. So you just watch from the sidelines and just cope the entirety of the bull market because you don't have the allocation that you wished you had. And I struggled with this greatly in 2021 because I was 100% Bitcoin from the bear market and COVID lows. But when I saw altcoins significantly outperforming Bitcoin and bought some, I still felt like I was significantly underperforming the market. And I had this anxiety that this was my last chance to make a ton of money in a crypto cycle. I saw what Dogecoin ended up doing. I saw what Solana ended up doing. And even though I was making a bunch of money, I wasn't having a good time during the bull market because I felt like I was leaving so much opportunity on the table. And I know that so many of you feel that way today. And now, of course, I ended up solving this problem this cycle from the experience I learned in my past two cycles, and that was making sure I always had long exposure no matter how bearish I was. As I'm sure a lot of you are aware, I expected Bitcoin to go lower here, but I did not sell all of my Bitcoin at that 618 Fibonacci retracement, and I was about 50% cash, 50% allocated because I knew there was a chance maybe we wouldn't pull back as much as I expected, and we ended up going a lot higher. And of course, in retrospect, I'm very happy I did that. Of course, I could have made way more money if I was 100% allocated during that dip that we had back over there, but I was 50-50 because I really wasn't sure what direction the market was going to go. And even though I expected lower, I knew there was no certainty that we had to go lower. And of course, that ended up saving me. And now I'm 80% long this market just because my assets have appreciated almost 100% from that low, maybe not exactly. I know Solana has, but I don't know about Bitcoin and Ethereum. But now I have this 20% roughly cash allocation where if we do see a huge sell-off, I have some dry powder to take advantage of dips. But now imagine the emotions I'd be feeling today if I was 100% cash over here because I was waiting to buy at lower prices and I've had to watch this entire rally, maybe FOMO in at higher prices, maybe try to use leverage or meme coins to make up for the missed opportunity. And that's why I always say that no matter how bullish you are, I always think it makes sense to have a cash position. And no matter how bearish you are, I think it always makes sense to have some long exposure in an asset class that you believe in and follow every single day. I mean, imagine the pain. And I mean, I've experienced this myself in the past, but imagine the pain of being 100% cash and missing an entire bull market for an asset class that you follow every single day. And this brings me to where do we go from here? Obviously, there's a ton of arguments right now. Is this a left translated cycle where we're going to peak early and have a huge correction? Is this the super cycle where there's no more pullbacks and we're going straight to 100,000 from here? Let's say that's the green scenario. I pretty much marked out the four real macro scenarios that are possible here. And of course, there's people all over YouTube and all over Twitter. They all have their arguments for each version of this. But how I like to approach allocation and portfolio construction is what's a portfolio I can have where I'll be able to survive or potentially thrive in all four of these scenarios. For example, right now I'm 80% exposed and I'm 20% cash. Would I make more money if I was 100% cash in this green scenario? Of course. I am leaving opportunity on the table by having any cash exposure. And if we do end up getting this green scenario, I should probably have way more altcoins and way more meme coins in my portfolio, maybe even some leverage if I'm 100% sure we're going to get this green arrow. But of course, no matter how confident anybody sounds online, there's no guarantee of that green scenario occurring. There's a chance of it occurring. Maybe these ETFs really have changed the world. I don't think that's incredibly likely, but it's still a small chance nonetheless, which is why I'm pretty heavily exposed to the market right now, even if I think a short-term pullback is incredibly likely. Now let's talk about this yellow scenario. In this yellow scenario, you probably don't want to be very, very heavy leverage or very heavy Solana meme coins because they'll probably take a huge hit if Bitcoin sees a 20 or 30% pullback, which is why I have this 20% cash position and why I'm not in risky altcoin plays quite yet. Have I missed out on a ton of opportunities? Of course, it all matters on one's risk tolerance and portfolio size. If this is your third cycle and you're in wealth preservation mode, maybe you don't want to take the same risk as somebody joining for the first time with $100. If I had $100, I wouldn't do 35% Bitcoin, 32% Ethereum, 16% Solana. So it all depends on one's risk tolerance. And that's why I never say to follow my portfolio allocations directly. I just show you guys what I do to try to be as transparent as I can and try to explain why I have the approach I have in case that could provide some kind of value to you, because I learned very painful lessons in the last two bull markets that I experienced. And sometimes, even if you're early, you can still mess up the entire cycle because you got liquidated on leverage along the way, or you had to sell the bottom on a risky altcoin because it dropped 50 or 60% and you couldn't hold on any longer. And for all of those experiences and all of those lessons I learned the hard way, I landed on this allocation being what I felt most comfortable with in terms of maximizing upside potential, but minimizing downside risk. All right, so what about this orange scenario? You have a lot of people talking about this. I guess a nice way to look at this economically, I would say this green scenario is no landing. The Fed threaded the needle. We're gonna cut rates now. Inflation is defeated. Party goes on. Super cycle. Let's do it. I would say the yellow is more of a soft landing scenario. Maybe we face some volatility, but the Fed doesn't break anything too bad. And even though we see some volatility, the ETF demand keeps Bitcoin relatively afloat and we don't pull back too far. And that brings us to the orange. I would call this more of a medium to hard landing. Bitcoin could see a very large correction if the Fed does in fact break something and take way too long to cut rates because of inflation concerns. I don't think there's a huge chance of this occurring, maybe 20%. Actually, that's a good idea. Let me put a percentage on all of these. I would say 5% chance we get green. Let's say 15%, actually no, 50% chance we get yellow. Let's say 20% chance we get orange, 5% chance we get red. I didn't add up to make sure those add up to 100, but let's say green and red are incredibly unlikely in my opinion. Orange is somewhat likely, but not super likely. And then I would say yellow is the most likely. We get a nice cool off here because of some macro concerns, and then we take off later in 2024. I don't feel like doing the math to do exact percentages on these right now, but I mean, let's say 5 to like 5%, 5%, 20%, 70%, something like that. That adds up to 100. Good. As you can see, very advanced mathematics being done here while live recording. But anyway, let's say the orange pull back to that 25K level. This is not impossible. I know a lot of bulls think this is impossible. I assure you this is not impossible. Bitcoin has gone up for 7 months in a row and has not seen a pullback greater than 20% in a very long time. But of course, because this is not incredibly likely, but there is still a chance of it, I have a hard time buying meme coins or very risky altcoins at these prices, because if we do see that scenario, my portfolio is going to get absolutely destroyed, and I don't know which altcoins survive that big of a correction. I do know that Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana will survive that and will come back afterwards, but I have no guarantee that these smaller and riskier plays will. And if Bitcoin has a pullback like this, I mean, altcoins are probably going to go down 80% or so. Is this likely to happen? Definitely not. But it's nice knowing that if it were to happen, I wouldn't, take an 80% hit on my portfolio, and I would still have cash on the sidelines to take advantage of those lower prices if we do get the orange scenario. And finally, we have the red. I would call this the macro doomer scenario. Great Depression is here. The Fed broke everything. They're going to keep rates high. They're going to break the entire economy. It's all over for risk assets. The super cycle that we've seen in Bitcoin over the past 16 years is over. Bitcoin is going below its low at 16,000. I think this is incredibly unlikely. I mean, I said 5%. It might even be less than 5%. That is very hard for me to see for Bitcoin, especially because even though I think there's a lot of people over exaggerating the ETFs, I do think ETFs being available to people in their brokerages does change Bitcoin a little bit. And I do think volatility will be reduced now that these new ETFs exist. So I think red is incredibly unlikely. But if for some reason, even if it's a 1% chance, this red scenario ends up happening, I would not want to be 100% altcoins or, 100% leverage longs in the very, very small chance we get the red scenario, no matter how unlikely it is. And this is pretty much how I try to approach markets. I know I don't do a great job of portraying that in the videos. A lot of times I talk about my short-term concerns, which are definitely there right now. I mean, this price action doesn't look amazing. It does look like Bitcoin wants to have a short-term correction here. But because I am long-term bullish on Bitcoin, because I don't think money printing is something that's going to go away anytime soon, I don't think governments are going to become responsible with their spending anytime soon. So on a macro, longer time frame, I'm very bullish Bitcoin and risk assets, which is why I like to be heavily exposed to this market no matter what short-term concerns I have. And that is essentially how I deal with what I'm going to call bull market anxiety. No matter which one of these scenarios plays out, I'm going to be happy that this was my allocation. Am I going to get outperformed by a ton of people? Of course, and that's okay, because no matter what you do, somebody is going to significantly outperform you. If I'm 80% safe assets, 20% cash, the person who's 100% safe assets is going to outperform me. The person that's 100% meme coins is going to outperform them. The person that's using leverage on altcoins is going to outperform that person doing only spot trading, and so on and so on and so on. And the further out you go on the risk curve, the more likely you are to blow up and have to sell at the lows because you took on more risk than you could handle for the cycle. And because of my macro concerns right now, I have a hard time being in altcoins that are much riskier than these three assets, especially because altcoins are already up so much in the cycle. Can they go a lot higher? They 100% can, but I don't know if I want to pile into them at these prices after Bitcoin hasn't seen a over 20% correction in a year and a half, and when we're in our 7th green monthly candle in a row. So anyway, hopefully I explained that clearly. This has been the most stress-free and peaceful bull market I've ever had. I've accepted the fact that many will outperform me, including most of you. I mean, most of you have outperformed me significantly because you bought the right altcoins or, went in 100% at the lows or dollar cost averaged at the lows. And that's absolutely amazing. Everybody has their own time horizon, their own risk tolerance. And I don't think there's a lot of use in regretting past decisions and beating ourselves up for not buying more at lower prices. What I care about is what's the best thing for me to do today and what gives me the best risk exposure that matches my risk tolerance and time horizon. And for me right now, that is this portfolio. And no matter which one of these 4 scenarios we get, I think I'm going to survive with this allocation that I have right now. But I still think that yellow is by far the most likely outcome. But anyway, we'll see what happens. Let me know what you think. Is it going to be green, yellow, orange, or red? Which scenario is more likely? I had so much more things I wanted to cover in this video, but I know a lot of you don't like the super long videos. So maybe I'll do a video tomorrow and cover what I'm thinking about the upcoming halving, the ETF stuff, some very important news articles that came out this week. I mean, stuff about the Coinbase case, which is very important for altcoins, a lot of stuff going on with the Ethereum ETF and what BlackRock and Fidelity are doing, and what Fink was saying about the Ethereum ETF this week. So many news things to cover. We didn't even cover Ethereum or Solana really in this video. So maybe I'll do a video tomorrow. I'm actually entertaining the idea of doing daily videos. I don't know if I want to commit to it, but I don't want to make these videos too long. So I almost feel like breaking them up into shorter videos and doing them daily might make them easier to watch than longer videos every 1 or 2 days. So let me know what you think in that regard. And of course, I always look forward to the comments. I look forward to you guys roasting me because, you know, I was expecting lower prices here, and I've been a perma-bear expecting lower prices all the way up, even though I was quite exposed to the market. And maybe there's even a lesson in there, because even though I was so short-term bearish, I still ended up making quite a good chunk on my portfolio because I was still 50% allocated no matter how bearish I was. And as I'm sure a lot of you remember, during the entirety of this price action and this price action, I shared my portfolio every day saying that no matter how bearish I am, I'm going to keep my long exposure and not sell it, because in markets, no matter how confident somebody sounds, no matter how many times somebody has been right in the past, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We use probabilities, we use logic, we use data, we use history, but there's no guarantees as to what's going to happen, which is why I always hedge myself by having a cash allocation and a spot allocation to assets I believe in. But anyway, maybe I'll do a video tomorrow. We'll see. Otherwise, these news articles will have to wait until Saturday or, you know, something like that. But thank you so much for the support on the recent videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.